Well, congratulations on Breaking.
Thank you. Thank you. It's
Uh,
really been a
I
pleasure.
Yeah, I saw it at Sundance last year. So it's and it was not called that then. It was called 892, I believe.
Was,
In
yes.
Back in there. Why the name change? First
We
question. That's a good
signed,
question to start with.
we signed a contract with Universal to distribute internationally and Bleecker to distribute domestically. And they really wanted to be able to get eyeballs on it. And it's such a hard thing to get small films of the scale seen. So they wanted to make sure that it was a title they could market. And it's hard for audiences to understand really the poignancy of an 892 until
Hmm.
you're in the middle of the film. So we landed on Breaking because there's so many different layers to it. Brian's breaking news, his soul is breaking. There's so many different connotations to that.
So you took it to Sundance last year, and we're talking about it now. It seems to be, especially in the UK, there's a lot of Sundance stuff in the old days, unless you broke out quite considerably or there was multi-million dollar deals that, Sundance was the way to get the eyes and ears on it. How's that process been, given that it's been over a year now since you debuted it, and now, it's coming to the UK March 2023?
We thankfully did have really great reception out of
Mm,
Sundance. So very, very grateful for that. It's a different market for films for adults than it used to be, right? To have a theatrical presence is hard. We did incredibly well considering theatrically, but we've done even more so on streaming. John, myself, Kwame, we get message after message from folks who are watching the film and really engaging with it. So very fortunate that it's a different landscape for film, but there is a path forward. There is an audience to be found. It's just a little bit slower and unique, and we're still dealing with the waves of the pandemic and the switch from theatrical to streaming, and finding really what the next wave of cinema looks like. I love the big screen. I love designing for it, but knowing that if your audience is also in their homes, sometimes you need to go to them.
So tell me about the beginning of this for you, because I spoke to John on Friday as we're recording this, so a couple of days ago, and he was saying about how he came on board, and then there was a kind of an initial concept for it, and that changed because of certain things, and then he came on board, and obviously now he's part of the producing team and everything else. So for you, where did the journey start for you, and how long ago was that, and how did you find the whole process from saying you'll do it to actually making the thing?
This is why directors have to take very seriously whatever they come into, because you're with a project for a long time. And Kwame and I first read the story of Brian Brown-Easley, Kwame Kwei-Armah, my co-writer. We read Brian's story in 2019, went off to Atlanta to walk the paths that Brian walked, to see his room, to see the bank. And just as we were coming home, COVID hit. And we anticipated gearing up right away, writing the whole thing. But it took forever to get a lot of those police records, even though our Aaron Gale had done some really phenomenal research that put us much further ahead. We, of course, talked with Brian's family and engaged with them, but wanted to do it right. We needed the tapes of the negotiations that Brian had. So it took some time to really dig in. And then Kwame and I wrote and did our 250-page pass, where everything was in there verbatim, and we're going to turn that into an art exhibition at the Young Vic, right? And then we realized this is a film. Nobody wants to sit through all of that. And also, it's not the most poignant version. So we pulled back the layers and just got to this really tight script and sent it over to Jonathan Majors, who jumped on within 3 days, which is incredible. And then Delta and Marvel and so many other things. But we'd reached out to John Boyega before that, and he'd had all these scheduling difficulties. But it felt like John was a man who had something to give here. He had such deep level empathy and such an incredible skill set. He's a giant of an actor, and we haven't seen a quarter of what he can do. I'm so excited for him just as an artist to have this piece of work out there. Grateful, of course, like on a human level of what it does for the world to have Brian's story out there, but him as an artist, to see this side of his work, to know that not only is he an artist who is capable of this, but he has such integrity in the process with how he communicates with his fellow artist. He has such respect for people, for the craft, for the demands that are placed upon his fellow artist, that it really does inspire freedom in your communication, to know that you're working from a place of mutual respect and trust.
Yeah. I mean, that saying to John about, Brian's story about the kind of the mentality of humans when they, particularly, men and women, when they go to war and they feel like they're doing their duty for their service, and they come back and the world's very different, and also their lives are very different. And it's a tough thing to put on screen, but this film does it wonderfully. Is that a tough thing between you and your Kwame and the other guys to get that onto film, because you want to tell his story, but also you want to tell the fact that this happens to so many people across America, and indeed across the world, when they kind of step back into real life.
Helping, what helped that quite a bit was talking to Brian's wife. Also, my dad's a vet. He grew up, growing up, we need to have another sip of that tea. Growing up, my dad had Agent Orange. So I saw a lot of how that affected him. I also saw it in a lot of his friends and veterans, what that looked like. But the really helpful conversation point and knowing where the line is on that, of honoring a man who lived and who has a daughter who loves him and a wife who loves him, who are living. How do we honor that and still honor the many, many that are alive who have stories like Brian? There was such a freedom in talking to Jessica, Brian's wife, because she understood that Brian wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
And in that, you're able to then amplify the moments that are loud in Brian's soul, but quiet in his voice.
Yeah. And in terms of for you as a filmmaker, I mean, this is I can imagine a challenging thing regardless. You're in predominantly one location, but there's a lot of other stuff going on under the surface. So these are the type of stories that you hope to tell more of, not necessarily this particular subject, but in terms of the people and the kind of the mentality, and these stories that perhaps we don't always know too much about until someone tells a story in a film or in a book or something like that.
I love storytelling. I love the power that it has. But a story like Avatar, where the son is overlooked and neglected by the father in that way, it can be just as poignant as the retelling of Brian Brown-Easley's story, if not more so sometimes. Both are needed, both are necessary, and I hope to be able to work across genres to be able to tell stories that free people.
Yeah. Just finally, I just wanted to ask you about John again. I mean, so many people know him from a certain series of movies that he was in, but I've seen him in a few other things. He was fantastic in yeah, a couple of those little things, in Small Axe, and then in The Woman King recently, as a support into that incredible cast and everything else. Do you feel like the best of him is yet to come? Because I feel like seeing him, it feels like, I think you alluded to that, the best of his work is still in front of him.
John is going to have a long, incredible career. He's going to tell stories that matter, and he can speak to this, but as an artist, he's so versatile. And you also really want to work with artists that value other artists, that value the process. And John does that. Yes. We're going to see a lot more from John Boyega.
Excellent. Well, he's great in this film, and I really enjoyed it. So I wish you all the best of it, and thank you so much for your time.
Hey, Scott.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey You Guys!